Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer weiteren Folge Witch on the Holy Night. Und ja, beim letzten Mal haben wir Alice gerettet gehabt, mehr oder weniger. Oder Sojo hat Alice gerettet gehabt, mehr oder weniger. Und dann kam ein Anruf, von dem es jetzt so scheint, dass Aoko jetzt in Schwierigkeiten steckt. Und ich habe mir gedacht, dadurch, dass das aktuelle Kapitel durch war, hab ich mir gedacht, war der perfekte Ort, um die Folge zu beenden. Daher sind wir jetzt im nächsten Kapitel. Witch on the Holy Night 1 dürfte das nächste Kapitel sein. Also, wir sind schon sehr... Jetzt ist das Finale schon. Aoko had not hung up, but the line remained silent. Alice set down the receiver, quickly put on her mantle and made for the entrance, moving her injured body by sheer willpower alone. Along the way she paused, turned to Soji and looked directly at him.
青子に何かあったんだな。
Alice hesitated for a moment, before pushing aside her anxiety and grabbing his
しず
hand.
きくん、一緒に来て。
Oh,
待ってくれ。一緒にってどこに？
相田教会まで。青子の方は営利神父にお願いするしかないから。
相田教会って病院の横にある？
そう。知っているのなら問題ないわね。
okay. Alice left the mansion and made her way down the tree-lined path. She was clearly determined, but the look in her eyes betrayed her pain.
アリス、連絡をするなら電話は？
Soji asked Alice, whose grip on his hand was light, but unyielding.
教会の人にならもう知らせた。もしかして病院のことを言っているなら、それこそ無駄よ。ハイヤーなんて言うけど、空を飛ぶわけでもないし。
Alice had thought of everything. She turned to the mansion and lightly snapped her fingers. In response, a window opened and countless starlings took
1
flight.
番隊は索敵。2番隊と3番隊は現場に向かって応急処置を。まだ生きているなら、青子の心臓を止めないで。
Alice commanded to the birds
しずき
firmly.
くんは裏庭から青子の自転車を持ってきて。
Soji let slip his discomfort at the thought of that thing. The custom-made red bicycle. When he was cleaning the incinerator, Aoko had verbally assaulted him for nearly scratching it.
いいけど、どうするつもりなんだ？
ここにいるより、教会にいた方がしずきくんは安全よ。しずきくん、二人乗りできる。
While Soichiro had seen people riding tandem and was confident he could imitate them, he still wasn't quite certain he could trust a bicycle with his life. Moreover, its frame was so light, he was unsure it could support both their weights.
二人乗りってことは、アリスが後ろに乗るのか？
できないなら、いいわ。
Alice turned away as if to snub him, then began walking. Unfortunately for Sojo, he was now on her bad side.
いや、そういう意味じゃないんだ。アリスとはイメージが合わなかったから。
Ignoring his pleas, she continued briskly towards the woods. There was no way she was going to ride the bike now. Sensing her stubborn streak, he desperately called out to her.
待った。今のはこっちが悪かった。すぐに持ってくるから、怒るのはツケにしておいてくれ。
Alice stopped. As soon as he saw her stop, he hurried to the rear cord, grabbed the key from where it was hanging and used it to unlock Aoko's bicycle. By the time Soichiro brought it back to the front of the mansion, Alice was counting towards the
アリ
forest.
スの性格、なんとなくつかめてきたな。
Muttering to himself, he straddled the bike. He rested his foot on the pedal, and it felt light but sturdy. Confident the bike could support his weight and Alice's, he began pedaling.
アリス！
She turned as he called out to her, before shooting him a piercing glare.
行こう。後ろの荷台に乗ってくれ。でもクッションがないから痛いと思う。辛かったら言ってくれ。
私は大丈夫よ。しずきくんが嫌じゃなければの話。
He had hit the nail on the head. Alice definitely had a grudge over the smallest things.
そういうことなら問題ないよ。アリスが後ろにいてくれるのは嬉しい。それで、行き先は間教会でいいんだな。
Unabashed and undaunted, he plowed on. His tone seemed to ease Alice's mood. She nodded calmly and took a seat on the luggage rack above the rear tire.
手を回すけど、 私が触れても平気。
ん？大丈夫だよ。体力があるのはさっき証明しただろ。
Alice silently wrapped her arms around Sojo. Once she had held on tightly enough, he gripped her,
よかった。
the bar handles. He said quiet, oder the handles on the bar, egal.
何が良かったの？
Sojo turned to her, an ambitious expression on his face, and then began pedaling vigorously. He let go of the brakes, and the bicycle hurtled down the Shiroi Nozuka's steep incline. Surprised by the sudden speed, Alice gasped and clasped Sojo tighter. Oh, wie lieb! She almost protested, but stopped when she saw the serious expression on Sojo's face. Instead, she decided to tighten her grip. Under the night sky, a young girl had put her faith in a young boy. Oh. Faster than a roller coaster. Das würde ich stark anzweifeln, obwohl es kommt darauf an, welcher Rollercoaster. The bicycle hurtled toward Misaki Station. Around the station there was no sight of cars or people. While the town slept under its snowy blanket, two people were racing like the wind. While he pedaled, the boy said,
本当によかった。二人乗りが思ったより簡単で。
but he was alone in his relief. It was their first bicycle ride together, and they spent it speeding down an empty highway. The boy's words were lost to the howling wind, fortunately. In spite of the later hour, there were still lights on in the church. Originally, the only light at this time of night came from the entrance to the sleepless hospital, ever vigilant and ready to receive patients. However, this was a quiet town with little nightlife. The hospital saw perhaps one emergency patient per night, however, and it was not equipped to handle tonight's sole patient. It was a little before 1 o'clock in the morning. Leaving the bicycle outside, the two headed into the church. With its snow-covered roof, the church looked like it was wearing a white hat that lit up the darkness. Within the entrance stood a tall shadow.
クオンジさん。
The man's voice was placid. Dressed in a long coat, he had been waiting for Alice.
エイリ神父、青子は？
ユイカが見ています。私が駆けつけた時には手遅れでした。青崎の家に伝令を願いたいのですが。
青子はそれを望まないわ。それに、あちらも今は城に囚われているそうです。今夜の相手は、真っ先に青子の祖父の動きを封じたようですから。
The two exchanged pleasantries. Sojo did not move from the foot of the stairs.
おや、そちらは。
Though the father seemed calm, his words had an edge to them. As if to protect Sojo from his gaze, Alice stepped between them.
彼は青子の使い魔。契約はまだなされていないけれど。
使い魔ってアリス。
Sojo was about to complain, but Alice shot him a fiery glare. That all but said, just shut up and play along.
そうですか。そのような申告はありませんでしたが、届けが遅れたのは不問としましょう。外部の魔術師と交戦中でしたからね。あなたたちはその撃退を最優先にした。
Alice nodded in thanks.
では通ります。彼の同行を許可しなさい。
ご自由に。私はこれより朝廷に向かいます。管理者が変わるのなら、両教会への資料を用意しなければいけませんので。
Toll.
ああ、留守中は律香に任せてありますから、必要なものがあれば彼女に。
As if passing the baton feather, an airy exited the church. Sojo took 2 full steps back to give him a wide berth. The priest had a dignified air about him. To put it bluntly, he was strikingly beautiful. Straight-nosed, glistening lips. Not a single imperfection on his mildly effeminate face. But that only went as far as his appearance. His manners lacked any hint of softness or grace. Just by looking at him, he could tell he wasn't dependable, like tempered steel, despite being somewhat unapproachable. Ich hab halt bei dem so Vibes von Fate. Mehr sage ich dazu aber auch nicht. The priest disappeared silently into the night, the darkness of his court overpowering the moonlight. In awe, Socho watched him leave.
なんか仙人みたいな人だな。
In his own way, Socho was expressing affection. For some reason, Father Air's distant tone made him feel nostalgic. Alice gave Socho a deathly stare.
気を許さないで。彼は教会の人間よ。私たちを監視する側だけど、今回は彼の手を借りるしかなかっただけ。許されるなら真っ先に消えてほしい人間だから。
Schön. Her curse ringing in the air, Alice placed her hand on the doors to the chapel. They were twice her height, and who knows how heavy. It did not look like she could open them anytime soon. Socho climbed the stairs 3 at a time and helped Alice push the towering doors inward. The dim light of the chapel brought with it the familiar scent of burning oil. The ecclesiastical interior was breathtaking. The tall ceiling, the stained glass windows on every wall. It all felt intended to illustrate the presence of the Holy Spirit within those chambers. Like the foyer in the Kuranji estate, there was not a single heater. The bitter cold makes the chapel feel more severe.
あっちゃん、こっちよ。
The gentle voice echoed through the chapel, incongruous to its surroundings. It was the voice of a woman.
リツカさん、奥。
Alice made her way past the rows of pews towards the front altar. Socho closed the large doors and hurried after her.
早かったわね。これから迎えに行こうと思ったのに。使える足があったから。足って、あれ？あなた。
お。
Socho showed himself surprising the woman. They stared intently at each other, wondering what the other was doing here.
知り合い？ああ、うん。まずいことに知り合い。宗十郎さん、引っ越したって話だけど、もしかしてあっちゃんのところに下宿してるの？
Socho nodded. Alice turned visibly sore at this unexpected development.
どういうこと？しずきくん、リツカさんとはどういう関係？関係って、お魚屋さんでしょっちゅう割引してもらったり、荷物持ちを頼んでみたり、たまにお茶飲んだりする主婦の友みたいな。意味がわかりません。リツカさん結婚していないでしょ。
Needless to say, Sojo was also not a housewife's best friend and also suggested that there were more urgent matters at hand.
うわ、そこを突っ込むのか。あっちゃん、私にだけは一切妥協がないのはどうかと思うの。リツカさんの場合、どこまで本気かわからないから。おかしなところは全部追求しておかないといけないだけよ。あら素敵。仲のいい姉妹みたいね、私たち。じゃあ、その信頼に応えて本当のこと言うと、彼とは町内会の顔見知りよ。スパイ行為とかそういうんじゃないし、そもそもそんな器用な人じゃないでしょ。本当？
Alice stared straight at Sojo to let him know she was mad at him for hiding this from her.
本当だ。魚屋でバイトしてる時に知り合った人だ。前に親切にしてもらったんで、お礼にイワシを1匹サービスしたら、それ以来ごひいきに。そうそう。商店街で買い物してれば、嫌でも宗十郎さんとは顔見知りになるわ。あっちゃんも怒るぐらいなら買い物に来ればいいのに。密かな商店街のアイドルです、彼。アイドルとは人気者という意味で、値切りやすいかもって意味じゃないような。
His apparent improbability would have to be questioned another time. Collecting herself, Alice focused on the door in the recess of the church.
リツカさんの事情は知りませんが、彼は青子の連れです。その他に説明はいりますか？ああ、やっぱりそういうことなのね。ま、言いたいことはいろいろあるけど、今はそれどころじゃないし。ええ、了解したわ。他ならぬあっちゃんの頼みだし、特殊な例だけど、彼はこちらで保護しましょう。
Alice nodded and began walking to the door.
アリス。
ダメよ、宗十郎さん。
As Soichiro was about to follow Alice, Ritsuka stepped in his
あ
way.
なたは行ってはいけません。彼女たちに任せなさい。
She asserted bluntly. Meanwhile, Alice had reached the door and entered further into the chapel.
言ってはいけないって。
あなたのためよ。青子の容体は普通の人が見ていいものじゃない。気分を悪くするだけ。それとも嫌な思いをしてもいいくらい。
Soichiro was not able to give an immediate answer. It had finally hit him just how bad a state Aoko must be in. Whereas in Alice's consistent, when he found her, he intuits that Aoko's injuries might be even worse. He tried to mention her expression in that state, but could not.
青崎相手に心配なんかしません。
Literally, he had never been worried about her before, not
で
truly.
も会いに行くのね。
はい。
He answered her reflexively. Ritsuka sighed at the boy's naivety, but nonetheless stepped aside.
どうぞ行ってらっしゃい。アリスさんが使ったドアから入って4番目の部屋よ。今一番取り込んでる頃だからゆいちゃんの邪魔だけはしないように。
Soichiro thanked her and went after Alice, leaving Ritsuka Suze, the self-proclaimed everybody's friendly neighbor, alone.
さてゆいかあたりなら止めるんでしょうけど、私は宗十郎さんの味方だし、傷つく男の子とか大好物だし、
Okay.
少々スパルタと自覚しておりますが、これも親切な姉心と思って宗十郎さんには後悔していただきましょう。
She spoke with force, but the words echoed aimlessly around the chapel. With a sigh, she shrugged her shoulders and made the sign of the cross in a rather impious manner. The sound of Soichiro's footsteps grew fainter. His lack of hesitation had left a pain in her heart, and not because he did not look back at her, but because he was choosing to ignore the primal fear inside him. An elderly man once said, "An animal's death and a human's are two different things. You may think they are the same, but they differ to their core. Our heads have known the difference since the dawn of man. An animal's corpse, be it a pig or a deer, is different. If the swing of an axe or a machete is violent, then so must a human corpse be. Therefore, before you see one with your own eyes, you should at least understand it with your ears. Listen closely, Soichiro. When a person dies, blood flows like a crimson river. It's too much to bear." Perhaps because he was not used to the stone path beneath his feet, Soichiro's mind wandered back to the words he had heard as a child. The instant he opened the door, there was a palpable change in the air. The room was small, with only a simple bed and a small wooden dresser, and there on the bed was lying on her side. Okay. Da fehlt ein Wort. Tending to her was the woman bed. Aoko? Nee, Aoko passt da nicht. Obwohl... Tending to her was the woman he had just seen in the chapel. Ritsuka. Hä? Nee. No, ich war etwas verwirrt, warte mal, das kann nicht funktionieren. Da war ein bisschen auf dem Schlauch stehen. No, she only looked a lot like her. Her eyes were closed and her garments covered in blood. He had met her maybe once before. Yurika Suze, a nun at the church. She was doing something too. Yurika held a pair of scissors and some thread. Her hands moved delicately, yet quickly, as though playing an organ. Her movements were precise, as a flawless reading sheet music. One by one, the supply of bandages diminished. Bandages recently applied to the wounds were quickly replaced with fresh ones. Gauze was placed everywhere to try and cope with the amount of blood. Once in white clothes was now dyed red and discarded. The dressing scattered around the floor resembled roses. In a wilted rose garden, the nun played her organ. The scene looked unlike any reality Soichiro knew, It was clear why the air had changed. There was a savage odor in the room. Even though he was experiencing it for the first time, he knew what it was. The smell burned his lungs. He could not bring himself to look at the bed. Fighting his feelings, his eyes refused to move there. He noticed Alice next to the bed. Ever expressionless, she looked like a statue next to her grave, except she was trembling ever so slightly. It could have been from fear, anxiety, rage, or a combination of the three. Before her lay alive on the verge of death. But whose life? It was difficult to tell with only a glance. Some sort of puppet covered in bandages, perhaps. Her hair should be beautiful, but it fell flat, disheveled, despite her short breath. Her chest converges up, down, faceless. So the thought was so she recalled the rodeo machine on the roof of the department store. Ah, the painkillers and anesthetic could not have been working. New bandages were soaked crimson in seconds. Her fingernails bit into the sheets. Her face twisted in agony. Anesthesia would not be enough. So if she was still alive, she must be unconscious too. It worried him that no one seemed concerned about this. In this state, she would surely lose her mind before her life. In short, the boy never wanted to see anything like this ever again. Bed sheets should be white, not red. With every blink the color deepened. Jojo was finally forced to accept that the bleeding mess in the center of it was her. He felt the blood surge in his veins, the squeaking of the bed, the snip of the scissors, the gasps of agony. It all faded. All he could hear was his own pounding heartbeat. The smell of the blood she choked up sent a wave of nausea through him. His knees abandoned him. And it was perfectly understandable. His brain had to shut his consciousness off to protect itself. The mind could only take so much reality. He would give anything to never see something like that again.
そうか。青子ちゃんは全部わかっているんだね。自分だけのことじゃなくて、この後に起きることも、何が残って何が残らないのかも、全部まっすぐに受け止めている。それでも自分であり続けられるということは、とても強いことなんだよ。
And on she went. I kind of liked her smile, but she just had to go and say the one thing I wished she hadn't. The last day of middle school seemed so long ago. As the ephemeral cherry blossom petals danced around, my little dream was crushed. I had never really considered myself strong, at least until I began remembering those words from time to time.
青崎は分かってると思ってた。いや、きっと分かってるんだな。だから、そこが強いんだろうね。
And Letty, an idiot who said things like that, had appeared in my life. I knew I always judged people more harshly than those around me, but to have someone I had only known for a few days point that out was like a stab in the chest. Not only that, the words sounded so similar they made me so angry I couldn't see straight. Only him and one other person have ever said anything like that to me. Then again, I suppose my sister said the same without actually saying it. You are different from us. But me being me, I took it as a curse rather than a compliment. My actions, my choices, my morals, all the good and bad I've done. When all said and done, am I really any better than everyone else? Of course I am. I will never sacrifice myself for those around me. They just had to call me strong true to myself, in spite of how alone, stubborn and ridiculous I know I can be. When I was younger, it only confused me. I mean, I don't know any other way. I am who I am. The frustrating fact is, I simply don't have the courage to give up. So why? Why do I get treated special for doing what comes naturally? The sunlight stirred her. Maybe it was the pain from having her whole body held together by arcane threads. But Aoko felt like she had had a silly dream. She gulped air through her painful parched throat. Grey rays of light shone through a small window, bringing her back to reality. Unable to bear it, Aoko attempted to roll over, except she could only move her right arm. She tried lifting her arm, but couldn't feel anything past her elbow. Once she stopped concentrating on her bandaged arm, it fell to the bed like a stone. Aoko took in her surroundings, moving only her eyes. Evidently she had been asleep in this bed. Unable to feel certain parts of her body, she felt like a robot. The room was tiny and undecorated. It was like an apartment without a tenant. Judging by the curtain repair, she guessed that she was in either church. Outside it seemed closer to noon than morning. Cloud filled the sky as usual, dulling the sun's rays. Idly she thought that it could be enough to melt the snow outside. And then finally she noticed the figure of a girl. Next to her bed, Alice Koranji was sitting in a chair, unmoving. She called out to her all too casually. It was more difficult to talk than she thought. Alice was her typical stoic self, although Aoko did notice a glimpse of concern in her eyes.
努力はしたわ。けど、瞳子さんに飲まされたものが解毒されるまで眠れそうにないの。半端な痛みは、こういう時に生ぬるいわね。
This uncharacteristically vulgar comment helped Aoko feel a little more like her usual self. She felt reassured having a comrade in arms by her side instead of a concerned neighbor.
そう、アリスもやられたの。状況は大体予想してるけど、一応細部を聞かせてくれない？
Aoko remained horizontally as she spoke with a cool tone. Despite Ako's condition, Alice granted her request. After all, they had known each other for 2 years. Alice knew exactly the kind of anesthesia Aoko Aozaki needed right now. Alice Koranji's battle with Toko Aozaki ended in the former's victory. The tamed troll was a special familiar even among fairy tale monsters. While lacking the incredible reality warping abilities of Flatsnark, its sheer mass, durability and strength were second to none. Toko's wound magecraft was rendered completely ineffective by its stone armor. In all fairness to Toko, most matches would not stand a chance against the Bridge Giant. The reason lay in the mystic's body. As a general law of magecraft, a mystic will lose to a stronger, older mystic. The history of the Bridge Giant dated back well over 1,000 years. Its origins could be traced to the 1st century when Britannia was conquered by the Romans. Ich bin gerade am Überlegen, ob ich die richtige Geschichte im Kopf habe. Weil die ich gerade im Kopf habe, ist eigentlich eher so eine irische, oder war das schottische? Aber wenn ich da gerade richtig im Kopf habe, waren das dort nämlich 2 Trolle, nicht nur einer. Daher, conversely, despite having roots dating back to the age of gods, runes had unfortunately been lost to time. Rune magecraft was little more than an attempt to revive and use a dead art. However, monsters from fairy tales like the troll were different. They lived on in the hands of Alice Koranji. The magical world was vast, but one could probably count on one hand the number of magecraft that still functioned after being chanted into existence a millennia ago, as Alison Ploys did. In contrast, Toko, the rune user, was only about 2 decades old. Carving a rune took only a moment. There was no way a quick spell could defeat the personification of London Bridge in Alice's homeland. That being said, a beast had appeared that surpassed even those from fairy tales. Beowulf, the golden beast. It seemed absurd to compare a small and relatively powerless wolf to a towering stone giant. The tamed troll's attacks were earth-quaking. A direct hit from its 50-ton strike would smash anything to pace, while a glancing blow would still create immense meat, and yet the beast had attacked head-on and torn right through it. The wolf's fur bristled, and they created metamorphosed like liquid. And the creature metamorphosed like liquid. It was a breathtaking display. The wolf howled at the moon as if in joy, and streaked forth like a bolt of golden light. In an instant the duel was decided. The radiant spear of a wolf flew straight through the giant's chest and sank its teeth into its heart. The troll exploded. Chunks of stone muscle rained down. Stony muscle rained down. Luminous fur scattered in the wind. Two mystics dispersed without a trace and returned from whence they came. The curtain fell on a battle straight out of mythology. There, among the rubble of the fairy tale monster, was the golden wolf standing like a flame. What came after could barely be described as a battle. It was more like the slaughter of defeated pawns. The wolf leaped on Alice, disemboweling her with ease. Its claws cut through the protective wards on Alice's coat like a hot knife through butter. The golden wolf. This wolf, which understood human speech, could only be the magical creature known as the werewolf. Werewolves were the first people of Western Europe, with origins far more ancient than the fabricated vampire legends of the continent. However, none were known to have golden coats. It was said that the most elite werewolf bloodlines beasted silver fur. Silver werewolves were pack leaders, and werewolves of that caliber were considered phantasmal, rather than merely magical creatures. But the golden werewolf was superior even to that, and so transcended human knowledge. Alice Cornge's plots were among the ultimate mystiques to have been created by humankind. Therefore, the golden wolf could only have been a mystique born of the planet. When its celestial body has been active for millions and even billions of years, occasionally a miraculous doublet of creation spills over into our current world. This mystique had to be over 3,000 years old. A human mage, no, any mage living in the current magical paradigm, would be helpless against the golden wolf. Not even Viel would they stand a chance of defeating it, which meant that this werewolf was auch in Alice's worst nightmare. Ich würde sagen, dass ich dann an dem Punkt jetzt diese Folge beende. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.